let me do, as soon as I push the go live, I'm just going to say, hey, Mitch, how you doing? Got that?
And then you're going to ask me a question, or do I roll?
No, I'll do, that means we're live. And so I'm just going to start talking.
Cool.
Okay.
Okay.
It's always good to wait for the technology to work. How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
Hopefully I'm doing pretty good. So we'll find out in a little bit.
Good.
So we're going to go live. Hey, Mitch, how are you doing today?
I'm good, Keith. How are you, man?
I appreciate that. We are on LinkedIn. So this is a real quick LinkedIn live event. And so I'm going to ask you a few questions if that's okay.
Love it. Let's do it.
Okay. So last week when we talked with, when I had you, Eddie and Tyrell on the horn, we talked about leadership and we talked about some really critical things that many people, at least me, really don't associate with leadership. And so those three things were humility, courage, and spirituality. And so I was hoping we could do a real quick review, or at least kind of track back and kind of talk about those things. I know you're big on that. So
Yes.
if you're willing, so let's kind of take a look at that. So when we talk about humility in terms of leadership, where are you coming from and why is that so vital to leading others?
First of all, and we discussed this a little bit in our last live, the one you mentioned. So for people that haven't watched it, I think that lives on your YouTube channel and a couple other places as well. Go back and watch that. We alluded to the idea that leadership, in my word, is a great burden. I think Eddie used the word responsibility. And I like that word as well. A lot of people think of the word burden as a negative. A burden can just simply be something of great responsibility that you carry with all seriousness and intention. And I think far too many people in leadership positions don't really take time to reflect on how much of a burden, a responsibility leadership is.
Mm.
And that directly reflects humility. You know, for someone that understands with full consciousness how much of an importance leadership plays, if they're in a leadership role, how they're sincerely impacting the lives of those around them. You could be working at a taco shop, you could be working at a coffee shop where I am, you could be running a Fortune 500 business. The level of responsibility in a leader doesn't change because you're directly impacting the lives of those around you. That is a really, really large burden to carry. And there's no other way to carry that other than through humility, because at any given point in time, that responsibility could be taken from you, either through poor decision making, or when people quit a job, when someone quits your team, 90% of the time they're telling you a story. And that story normally is they don't care for your leadership. And the data tells us that. The data tells us that the majority of the time people leave a job for another job is because they don't like the leadership. There's something that you're doing or not doing that is negatively impacting the people around you. It takes a lot of humility to listen to that story. It takes a lot of humility to learn from those. You know, Eddie the other day kept using the word subordinate. Now, that's a very militaristic term. We don't normally use that term in what you guys identified as the civilian world. But there's some truth to it. And the truth to it is, just because someone is your subordinate or employee, it doesn't make them unequal. And while I think many leaders would agree with that in speech, I don't think they agree with it in action, because they often treat people as lesser than. Well, the act of humility says we are on equal ground. Just because I'm getting paid more or I'm in a higher position in no way makes me better than you. It simply means I either got lucky or someone noticed my hard work and my effort. But when someone gets promoted to a position of leadership, very rarely did you earn it more than anyone else. It just means that you were in the right place, right time, and someone noticed. And so that takes a heart of humility that says, you know, I'm okay with understanding that everyone is equal. And I'm also okay with treating everyone as such. That is a really That is really the ultimate level of living within your humanity, is understanding from a place of awareness and consciousness that everyone is equal. And I'm going to listen to you and give you the power, just as I hope someone does for me. And it's critical. And if someone leads from a place of humility, they are going to do a much better job at leading and impacting others.
So I like that. So you use the word humility and humanity, leading from a place of humility and humanity. So are those
Yes.
interchangeable, or are they distinctly different, or do they kind of merge into one?
Yeah, I think they're a little bit of one mind, from the perspective of, I don't believe someone can live from their fullness of humanity without living the path of humility.
Hmm.
Because to be fully human means that I'm fully vulnerable, I'm fully willing to share, I'm fully willing to listen, I'm also fully willing to support. Well, you can't do any of those things unless you're walking from a place of humility. Open heart, open mind, open hands. It means I'm willing to give and I'm willing to take. It means I'm willing to receive and I'm willing to sacrifice. You can only do that through a path of humility.
Earlier, you talked about somebody who achieved the rank of a leader or a supervisor through a promotion. But leadership can also be found in somebody who's trying to build a team from the ground up. So say it's their own business, and they're not wanting to do the solopreneur anymore. They want to kind of build that team. Or where does that kind of mindset fit in to that small business model, that I'm both the boss, but I'm also the team lead and I'm also part of the team? How does that kind of work?
There's this interesting thing about small business owners, and that is most of them come from a place of humility. Sometimes you find a small business owner that's second or third generation. They were kind of gifted the opportunity. The majority of small business owners are first generation. It means they're grassroots. It means they're the HR person, the marketing agent, the social media guru, the cook, the barista. They're everything. That's a place of humility, just simply from the fact of they can't depend on anyone else. Now, the interesting thing about small business owners, and I've seen this, in my profession for 2.5 decades now, is oftentimes a small business owner can taste success, and because they built the success, they want to control the success. So it's almost like they come from this place of humility, but the humility turns into control, and they become very difficult to work with and for. But it's because they take so much pride in what they've built, and they have the bloody knuckles of all the years of struggle. And so what I like to encourage small business leaders with is always keep in mind that place of humility from which you started. You started with nothing. You started on the grassroots level. You built it. But just because you built it doesn't mean that someone else can't help you build it better. And so you see that a lot in small businesses. Well, I built this, and so it's mine, and so I'm not going to relinquish control. Well, that's not humility. That's pride. And so we don't want to dance in that area. We want to remain humble and allow others to help us build. It's this idea of, I built something, now I'm going to let someone else stand on the top of my shoulders to build it even further, because they can see with a larger vision than I can. Often when we're in the weeds of it, we can't see the forest, but we can bring someone else in on the team that can see the forest. They can take that 50,000 foot view, and that takes great humility. And so it is this weird dichotomy that sometimes it exists with small business owners, is that they build from the ground up from a place of humility. But as they gain success, they lose that humility because they want to control everything. And controlling is the worst way to try and empower others. You cannot empower others through control. It doesn't work.
Well, I appreciate that. The other thing that we talked about was bravery and or courage. And I think Tyrell was the one who brought it up last week, that
Right.
he would like to see more bravery or courage. Now, Tyrell and I are both Marines, and so we recognize that facet of leadership as a necessity, especially if you're infantry, which I was. And so there needs to be that element, because you don't know what you're going into in our current state of affairs. overseas may reflect upon that. But in business, is there are they the same bravery, courage, and how does a leader, I don't want to say act, but act in light of being brave or courageous? It's, small business who start as solopreneurs act in that position, but they can't stay there, of course. And we've just said that. So they have to expand, they've got to grow, they've got to scale. And so they've got to take maybe steps of faith, but maybe that's not a good word. Steps of courage may be a better way of approaching it, to build their team. So how does that work?
Well, first of all, I think you're right on. I think it is steps of faith because oftentimes you can't see where you're going, right? I like to define it this way. Courage is what takes place within you. Bravery is the manifestation through action.
Okay.
So it takes courage to summon within you that it's okay to act on this idea, to open that business, to build that team, to ask for that promotion, whatever it looks like. Bravery is simply the manifestation of courage in action. So someone often has courage and says, well, I want to sit down and write a book, or I want to sit down and develop a business plan. It takes great courage to do that, but it takes bravery to submit that book to a publisher. It takes bravery to go rent that space to open that business. So you can actually have courage. I mean, let's be honest, we all have courage every day when we offer ourselves out of bed each morning and go face the big world. That takes a lot of courage. But many of us don't act in bravery. Many of us have these dreams and these ideas, and we have that courage kind of boiling within, but we don't ever take the steps of bravery to manifest that outside of ourselves. And everything we've talked about takes great courage and bravery. It takes great courage to want to open a business. It takes great courage to be willing to hire people. It takes great courage to want to share your idea with the world. But bravery is courage in action. Bravery is and it's getting that business loan. It's opening those doors. It's making coffee for people, that you thought you made the best cup of coffee. Well, now it takes an act of bravery to step into that and sell it. And that's hard. People are literally using their life savings. They're getting hundreds of thousands of dollars in loans from banks. They're applying for grants. I mean, all of that, Keith, takes incredible courage and bravery. But the great thing is when you step further into courage and bravery, you receive more of it. And that's what I always want people to understand is the more I use, it's just like going to the gym. The more I use my muscles strategically, the more muscles I attain, the more strength I attain. The more I use the muscles of courage and bravery, the more courage and bravery I attain. And so for a guy like me who's been doing this for almost 25 years, I've failed, I've succeeded, I've failed again, I've succeeded again. It's nothing for me to go, I want to open a new business. But for someone who's never done that, it makes them want to throw up because they're testing their courage in a way they've never done before. Right. And so at some point, though, just like you experienced in the Marines, at some point, you just have to get out and do it. You have to jump out of the airplane. You have to jump out of the ship. You just have to get into the wilderness of business and go for it. Because if you never go for it, you'll never know. And so at some point, you just have to let that courage form to action, which is the act of bravery.
I want to keep this conversation within 15 minutes, but I do want to hit one more spot, and that's spirituality. And you're big on spirituality. In fact, the first chapter of your book talks about spirituality and leadership. But it's a strange world to kind of combine those two ideas. So give us a summary of your perspective of spirituality in leadership.
Yeah, the interesting thing is it seems strange, right? It seems strange to use spirituality in business and the marketplace. The funny thing is it's happening all the time. Everything we have just discussed is spirituality. Spirituality is simply living from a greater place of awareness and consciousness. And we are all spiritual beings, regardless of your faith system, belief system, whatever. It's not equitable to faith or to religion. Spirituality is our essence. It's who we are. Quantum physics tells us this. There are things about this life and universe that we have no way of knowing, understanding. Science can't prove it. When you break down an atom and a neutron and all this stuff down to its lowest level, it's all simply unexplainable. The greatest scientists in the world can't explain it. But what they can say is there is something greater at play. And again, I'm not talking religion. What I am talking is every one of us are some sort of being. And that is what I like to call a spiritual presence. And so the ideal of leadership is to function from that place of spirituality, of humanity that connects with everyone else. And when you can connect with others, you can then empower others, and you can give them an encounter that will build sustainable success over time. Now, the great thing about that is as well, you get to define success. And that's the honor of living this human life, is that we get to define what it looks like for us. But what I can tell you is when you lead from that place of spirituality, from that place of connection with other humans, you will then create an experience that will undoubtedly bring forth success, almost out of your control. It's a very eerie thing. It's almost like the less you strive for success and simply strive for connectedness, the more success comes your way. And so that's the idea of spirituality and bringing that to the workplace. Don't be afraid to be connected. Don't be afraid. Again, we're talking about courage and bravery, right? Mm-hmm. Connect with your team, connect with yourself, reflect on the moments of the day, and really, really strive to live from a place that is so deep that others walk away from you going, wow, that was a great experience. And that is the idea of spirituality in the workplace specifically.
Well, I want to end this live stream on that positive note. So Mitch, thank you. Hang on for a moment. Let me go ahead and end this live stream. Let's talk before we hang up. All right, I think we're off the live stream. And let me double check. How are you doing? Where are you at?
How are you? You have I'm in Albuquerque. I'm just at a coffee shop today.
Okay. Yeah, it looks like we're
doing
done.
Some work. Good. Hey, good luck on your interview, man. Let me know how it goes.
I appreciate that. So yeah, let me get out of here. It looks like it's live and it looks pretty good, but it looks like it's done. Okay, awesome. Cool. Hey, have a great day, and I'll talk with you later.
You too.
Okay.
Let me know how it goes. Okay.
All right.
Talk soon.
Bye.